Hey everybody, what's up? Shawn Patrick Greene checking out. We're back. We're here. We're live now. All right. So I'm currently sitting here at home, and I just wanted to start a debate club. I set up a group that's kind of like a bunch of different topics we can bring up. Theology, uh, what's another thing? Science, culture, philosophy. I'm interested in a lot of things, and I don't know everything, which is why debates are great because we can share ideas. Some people can just grandstand. Some people can just act like they know everything, and yeah, that might work for them. But that's not me. I don't. I'm not trying to grandstand, but if there is something I'm passionately about, if I'm passionately willing to debate, then hang on 1 second here. I got to make sure I see what's going on with the videos. I might have this on. All right, let me just turn that off. I'm just following along, see what's going on. I just want to see people's thoughts. Nowadays, people are consumed with other people's ideas, and with the acceleration of AI and everything, I'm talking we're consuming AI like crazy now. At least I have in the last several months, but definitely the last 2 years. You know, it was fun when it first started launching to kind of experiment to see what AI was capable of. The more and more we have AI posted, the more we're seeing how advanced it has gotten. So I'm gonna see if I can see if anybody else is available on this platform here. But right now, this is just kind of like a launch, and I want to see who's interested, who's not, who's actually up for the task to debate anything, and I mean anything. This group that we have is meant for people to passionately describe their own thoughts on what's happening in this world. And that's what I want to see what we got going on. I'm gonna post my first poll for now. And I think I'm activating it. Activate poll. Which country will Trump invade next? Cuba, Colombia, Iran, Greenland. So it's active right now, the poll. So if you're looking at it, you're checking it out, let me know. But this open debate, um, the hot topic of this week would be Maduro, the daycare situation in Minnesota, Maduro in Venezuela, obviously, big situation going on, changing of the guard, if you will. As far as politics, as far as what's going on around the world, geopolitics. And then we also have kind of like an East versus West theology kind of debate, based on when was Jesus' birth date? When was it actually celebrated? And we have two schools of thought. originally, really. There's a lot of other schools of thought when it comes to theology, but the big predominant ones would be the East and the West churches. So, for instance, if we have the church in the West, which was predominantly from Rome, or Roman Catholicism, if you will, I believe it is theophany is more emphasized for the Christmas holiday. I believe I'm right on that. I could be wrong, but I did a study on this recently, and I shared a little bit about this at a retirement community a couple days ago. But let me get my notes because I don't want to mess this up. East and West Christmas. So we'll get into that real quick. Tomorrow, by the way, would be the holiday season in the Eastern churches, the Eastern Orthodox, predominantly Greek Orthodox or Russian Orthodox, even some of the what's the other Orthodox? Ukrainian Orthodox. Excuse me. The Coptic Christians, they go by where Egypt's Alexandria is their epicenter of their Christianity, and Ethiopia has their epicenter of the Orthodox. They call Oriental Oriental Orthodox. Kind of fall into all these categories. So let me just look it up real quick. Okay, so the Christmas in the Eastern and Western churches. The West, meaning Rome, Christ is born for us, and it emphasizes him being incarnate, him coming to us. The child is born. Salvation begins with the manger, whereas the Eastern emphasis is about Jesus born as the victor. So he's like more about the resurrection and the cross and what's to come of his life during this time. The West, Roman Catholic, Advent, 4 weeks leading up to Christmas. The Eastern is Nativity Fast, which is about 40 days, emphasizing more repentance, prayer. The Epiphany, which is God with us, I believe, right? Magi and Christ revealed to the nations, Western focus. And Theophany, baptism of Christ, and the revelation of the Trinity. So that's the Eastern focus. So there's a little difference in schools of thought as far as what to emphasize during this holiday season. What's right, what's wrong? You know, who says what they're doing is the right way? What's the wrong way? Okay. Interesting. I have a notification here on my Facebook page. Your live stream is experiencing performance issues. That's funny because I've experienced performance issues, but I'm not getting into that. Try closing other applications or browser tabs. I think we're going to be okay. So I hope everybody's watching, streaming. Let's see what we got here. We have one share. Okay, there's no viewers live right now. Okay, so all right, so we currently don't have viewers live. So this is number one, date number one. It's meant to be a test run to see what can come of this. Let's see, clipping. All right. I'm just searching through this dashboard. So what is your take on this Christmas holiday season? What do you celebrate? What's your school of theology? Are you for the Western side of emphasis of the visitation of Christ on earth as coming into this world for the first time? Or is it more Eastern where it's like the king? It's about the king of, the soon coming king, the victorious king. It's the humble child or the victorious king. It's both, but there's an emphasis around Christmas as to one or the other, depending on your theology. So what is your idea? What do you think? What is your school of philosophy, of theology, of history? All right, so let's get back to the original question. Which country do you think Trump is going to invade next? Cuba, Colombia, Iran, Greenland. There's a lot of people that don't know, they don't understand Trump's psyche at this point. They don't understand what his end game is or what his angle is. He's got 3 years left, okay, in this term. And then that's it. He's no longer going to be eligible. He's no longer going to be eligible to be president again. Unless Melania runs, she becomes president, and he becomes the vice president. That won't happen. What do you think? Are you guys up? It's 9:12 p.m. Eastern time. That would make it 6:12 p.m. West Coast time. So tonight, I know a lot of people are celebrating Epiphany for the Eastern Orthodox Church, and actually tomorrow is the beginning of the celebrations. Tonight actually is the beginning of the celebrations. They kind of go ahead of everybody. Let's see where we're at. Can't watch now, we'll watch later. Okay, so we got a couple people commenting. That's good. I don't know why I can't see it in the dashboard of all places. Okay, so Pat Porter, Western, but it always brings me back to he will be coming again. That's right. So this is a minute ago. Pat Porter made a comment, and Pat says I'm watching live. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Pat. But there's a distinction, though, between the two thoughts, the two ideas of East and West Christmas holiday. So the West, I believe, is theophany, right? I have to go back to my notes. I'm completely in the dark here. Let's go back. Let me go back to my studies. So I got to get it into my mind first so that I'm not talking baloney. I want to be able to articulate my thoughts as intelligently as possible. Here you go. Christmas. Okay, I do have a bigger study of these notes. So you got to bear with me on this. So, all right. So now tell me what you think about the poll questions that I asked. Which country? Okay, my frame rate's kind of low. I understand. My frame rate's low, so it's kind of making me stutter. There you go. Now I can see some comments. So Paula Brickhouse says, I can't watch now. We'll watch a little bit later. Very good. All right, let me get back to my study that I did earlier. All right, the Western emphasis, the nativity, historical events of Jesus' birth, humility. Okay, so again, East is about Christ as the victor. Advent versus nativity fast. Okay. Christmas and theophany, or okay, the West, Epiphany. Okay, very good. So here we got the West emphasizes Epiphany, focuses on the Magi, Christ revealed to the nations. So it's the revealing of the Savior that's born. Okay, got it. The Eastern Church, theophany, focuses on baptism of Christ and the revelation of the Trinity. So even though it's not just about the birth to the East, and they talk more about his ministry and stuff like that, it focused on really his whole time here on earth. So that's kind of what we're looking at. West asks, who is this child? And the East declares, this is God revealed to the world. Theophany being the manifest presence of God on earth. It's the same thing in the West, but, Matthew declares Jesus being Emmanuel, God with us. So it's a similar situation with the East and the West. Again, I shared some of this at a center, which I thought was really an honor, right here in Orchard Park, New York. Let's see what else we got here. I gotta refresh this every now and then, because sometimes these messages, the comments aren't coming through properly. So Pat Porter, where are you from, Pat? The comments are not coming in live, so if you are adding more comments, just let me know. You could tune in, but eventually we're going to have people coming in to the chats. We're just kind of setting the standard here on Facebook Live. And we might just do these dialogues either in a different platform. Northeast Ohio. All right, Pat. So how far are you from Cleveland? Or would it be maybe closer to Erie, Pennsylvania? Yeah, so the idea is that the holidays are around Christmas 25, December 25th, has been a standard date used. The debate is, well, why do the East celebrate it on the 7th of January? And it has everything to do with the calendars. The Julian calendar, the Gregorian calendar. The Julian calendar, which was during the time of Christ. The Gregorian calendar, which was the time of the Reformation, when Pope Gregory switched some things. So that's really what it comes down to. So an hour south of Cleveland. Not too far from Columbus or Dayton. So it really has to deal with calendars too. So even that, like holidays for Easter. Last year, or this past year, 2025, of Easter, it was the first time that East and West in many years celebrated on the same weekend. So, and then every year it's usually a week or two apart, depending on the calendars. And the calendars are lunar, solar, lunar, or solar, and those are about the three distinctions. About 2 hours from Columbus. Okay. I passed through Cleveland several times. I've passed through Columbus numerous times, and Cincinnati, driving from Buffalo, New York. So, amen. So yes, Columbus, Ohio. And you're not too far from Dayton, I'm assuming then. I'll look at my Google Maps. When you say an hour, is that by vehicle or horseback? I'm kidding. I'm gonna look at the map here. Cleveland. I heard. Correct me if I'm wrong. I heard that there will possibly be a Buc-ee's. It's off topic. A Buc-ee's somewhere in Ohio. I don't know where that's going to be yet, but Buc-ee's, if you don't know, is like the Walmart, the super Walmart of gas stations. So, probably past Canton then, huh? About Canton area, if you're going south. Okay. I know somebody from our church went to a college in Wooster, Ohio. Okay. I'm having spotty internet right now for some reason, so be patient with me. All right, so anyways, I just wanted to kind of bring that up as a topic for Christmas. And then we can talk about feasts, maybe in the future, for theology debates. You have a lot of the Hebrew feasts. You have a lot of the Christian feasts, East and West, Orthodox, Oriental Orthodox. You have a lot of feasts throughout the year. What are we supposed to keep? What are we supposed to observe? What is required of us as Christians to participate in Christianity? Just something to consider for a debate in the future. And again, this group that you're watching this in, theology, philosophy, science, and culture, it's an etc. It's more than just those four topics. It's just those are four topics that are actually, the focus mindset for this group, but it's not limited to those four topics. Vehicle. Not sure how long to Dayton. I think I heard there might be a Buc-ee's down on 70. Yeah, that's what I heard. We're about halfway between Canton and Wooster. There you go. Yes, I did. I heard that Buc-ee's is coming to Ohio. So, off topic. I'm looking at the chat if you're wondering what I'm talking about. Okay, so now let's get back to the original poll that I was talking about. Let's talk about this politics thing. This whole debate. Let's just start with the Maduro situation first. What's prompted this? And by the way, if you remember, I think it was in the Biden administration, even before that, during the Trump administration, first time, Trump was heavily contested by not doing anything against Maduro during his first term. by Obama. Then, what's his name? Biden put out a ransom of $25 million to capture Maduro. So I want to know who's going to get that $25 million now that Trump has ordered that happening. Who's getting that $25 million and who's paying it? I wonder if Biden's going to be paying it. I doubt it. Again, I'm not trying to be left or right on this conversation. I really want to be very non-biased and non-partisan, but I definitely want to debate all sides. Hey, we could throw the Green Party in here if you want. I'm okay with that. Libertarians. Let's throw everybody in the mix with debates. So as far as this politics, though, Maduro running Venezuela to the ground as far as the people are concerned. They were the richest country in the world as far as oil income and reserves, and in the U.S. we were the only country that created the technology to process the oil, the crude, and refine it. With the machines that everybody else has are used to a little bit lesser thickness of crude, and because of the thickness of the oil that Venezuela had, the U.S. developed a system to be able to process that for anybody's consumption worldwide. So they were a benefactor to our technology. So now we have this guy that took over, excuse me, I think Chavez, and then Maduro basically destroyed the livelihood of the countrymen, not the government, not the ruling party, but the countrymen of the Venezuelans. They were pushed into poverty, and because of that, because of communism implemented as a form of government, this is now the standard. This was now the proper system that Maduro thought would work for their country. And of course, communism comes from most of the Eastern philosophies, China being probably the largest of the pushers of communism over the last 60-something years, 80 years maybe. Russia, they became communist, seems like overnight, after, right during World War I era, after the fall of their king. So those two countries really have been the catalyst to what communism could and is. Could be and is now. And Maduro, Chavez, assumed that Marxism would have been the proper system to take on for Venezuela, for Colombia, for any part of South America that wants to embrace that. And Maduro exploited it. He is not hurting. They were swimming in income. And now 95% of the country, the countrymen of Venezuelans, are in poverty. 95%. That's pretty bad. That's a pretty bad regime if you can't take care of your own people like that. If America ever plunges into that communist system, it's going to be the worst era of our history. Communist, Democrat, Republican, do they have Jesus? Right. It's a good point. It's right. Jesus is the answer. Some might even, I've heard an argument for communism based on how Jesus lived with his disciples. They all shared. Nobody had any lack amongst them. And even Jesus prompted the rich man, saying, "Hey, sell all that you have and follow me." You know what I mean? So now what? Is communism a viable system? If you look at it in the context of how Jesus was, he was taking the wealth of each other's. Some had more than others. Some had nothing. But the concept of what they call communism is, in its purest form, can be a valuable asset for everybody, for community. That's where you get communism from. So even Paul was, I think it was a couple other people during Peter's time, where people were selling their property. Even Barnabas, in Acts, sold his land in Cyprus, I think is where he had land, and he gave his proceeds to the feet of the apostles, and the apostles distributed it as needed to the rest of the congregation. So that can be considered a form of either socialism or communism or some sort of, Christianity style of making sure everybody's provided for. And that's a viable thing. But here's my point on that. Barnabas wasn't forced by taxation to give up what he owned. He did it voluntarily. So here's the distinction between a communism form of government, where a ruling class forces everybody to distinguish all of their rights to anything, and the collective becomes equal. All the while, the ruling class, is rich. I'm going to give you an example of currently. The Somali governor or senator, or I forgot what her status. She wasn't a senator, I don't think. Ilhan Omar was, I think, a representative. I don't know. But the point is that she acquired so much wealth with the system that she was involved in. And really, the Somali people group in America were very communist in nature. But they acquired so much wealth from outside sources that it wasn't true communism, because it was just for their own community. They were acquiring wealth through fraud for their own community and their own countrymen across the pond. But it wasn't true communism, because the rest of Minnesota was not benefiting as they were. So you can argue for or against that concept. Mamdani is Madani. I forgot how you pronounce his name. The new governor or new mayor of New York City. Okay, communist, social democrat is what he calls himself. It's communism. He flat out lied. He said whatever he could to get elected, saying buses will be free. And immediately, the day after he took an office, the fee went up to $3. Previously, I think it was $2. I don't know. So, you You can't trust any politician, period. Anybody's running for an office of any kind, you really can't trust them. They're really there out for themselves. And they might show or have appearances of caring for others. The truth is, they're looking for a way to succeed in this life and acquire the wealth that they need until the end of their life. They're not trying to find out how much they can get wealth in the hands of their own people that they represent, or their mayor over, or whatever. Kel, I love your spirit. I'll say, your comment, communist, Democrat, Republican, do they have Jesus? If they don't, their actions will be worldly, carnal, destructive, and cruel. Amen. I don't know if I can show these comments or not. I don't think so. It's just in the chat. If you're watching it live, it's in the chat. Another comment from Kel. There's so much negativity about communism, of how controlling communist countries are. Did they make people perceive it this way for a reason, or are you saying communism is positive? Okay. I'm saying that a community base where there is no ruler or ruling class over the people, a true community base is a good system. If everybody's equal, including anybody that's considered a leader in that community, if everybody's together on the same page, it can work. But it doesn't work if the ruling party of that community hoards the wealth. That's what Maduro was doing for his regime. They were acquiring the wealth for themselves and his constituents, those people that ruled with him, But the average human being living in that country, citizens, were struggling. And that's the problem with communism, is it never is going to be the true form of community. It's always going to be greed that controls the situation. I would say El Salvador is probably your best country right now in Central America, Northern, South American policies. That's just my opinion. You can debate that if you'd like. There's a lot of situations in South America that is dire for the lesser than people groups. Some of the native people, the people that were truly just native before the Euro and the Afro groups of people came in, they're still marginalized in South America, especially in like Peru, Chile, Ecuador. There's still people that are marginalized, that are not treated equally. We could say the same thing about natives in the U.S., Mexico, Canada, anywhere in the Americas. Anyone who was non-Euro, non-Afro, non-Asiatic descent, which is kind of, I think, impossible, because I think many of those people groups migrated here thousands of years before we got here as Europeans anyways. I'm sorry, Kel. So, but you said there's a pure part of communism. Maybe I'm misunderstanding. All right, so communism is a government system that's man-made, man-controlled. What I mean is the concept that communism could be where it's community, where everybody's equal, including the leaders. That's when it can work. That's when it's fair, because the wealth is not pushed all the way to the top of that leadership, whoever's in that role. I'm not saying communism, the political form of government we've known for the last 100 years plus, but I mean the communism concept of a community base that's equal. So, you know, it's not going to happen because it's hard to distribute wealth to everybody equally when there's greed involved. You'll never have it equal because you're always going to have. Some people have this personality. I've had it. If you look at my stuff back here, you can consider me a hoarder. I'm going to clean up some of this stuff, so don't worry. One of these days. You could be a hoarder where you just collect, you collect, you collect, you collect. You just, and it's all for just you, instead of distributing it to others that might need what you have. Now, all this, these are little small money items, but if I sell this one figure that I have for $10 and give that $10 to somebody else that needs it, that's part of that community-based thinking, the mindset that you would have. And in a church setting, nobody in your congregation should be struggling. Not saying you shouldn't be working, but you shouldn't all be struggling. Somebody could help the less fortunate, the less privileged, the less acquiring entity in the group, in your community. Yes, Venezuela was communist. You can call it socialist. You can call it whatever you want, but Maduro was definitely, if not communist, heavily influenced by communism on how to run this country. China is probably the biggest influencer. Russia was definitely a big influencer, especially in Cuba. Russia influenced Cuba and their policies. If you look at history back, the 1950s and 60s, when Russia was trying to make a power play after World War II, they were trying to impose communism beyond its borders after World War II. They weren't fighting fascism anymore via the excuse me, the Nazi Party that was disbanded, but they were definitely pushing the Marxist communist agenda after World War II, anywhere outside its borders and across areas where they disagreed with democracy. America was not as hated until the 60s, I would say, by Russia, as far as the government. But Russia influenced Cuban policy, Venezuelan policy, China policy. Russia influenced many countries that turned into communist style of governments. And then when China got a hold of it, they ran with it. They were pushing the agenda all the way through to Southeast Asia, which is why we had Korea, we had Vietnam wars that we were fighting against communism, communist aggression. At least that's what we're told. You're welcome, Kel. So, yeah, where are we at today with this? I mean, Venezuela, they're part of a larger ecosystem of economy that comes from the sale of narcotics. Cocaine, opium, all these different drugs that have been flooding the U.S. for decades. Their economy is dependent on these things, yet Venezuela is the one that sits on the largest oil reserve in the world. And yet they're still resorting to using narcotics as part of their economy. That doesn't make any sense. You two have a good night. Wish your hubby and your son a good night for me as well. Thank you. Yes, Mariah, my daughter's going to have a good night as well. Thank you for that. So, economy is important for countries, especially if they're full of greed. Can we say America's greedy? Absolutely. If anybody is the biggest capitalist of the history of mankind, it's the United States. We didn't get that way until after World War I. We were getting to that point a little bit. If you remember, 1860s, we were in a Civil War. We really didn't have much going on. We didn't have a superpower elitist ability. We had no foreign wars that we could really go towards and fight against on our own merit. We might be side by side with others, but we, as an American country, we weren't. We were still young. We were in a civil war. After the Reconstruction era, after the Civil War, guess what? America started thinking, okay, let's rebuild. Let's create an identity. As soon as World War I came up, it was almost as if it was that opportunity for America to show itself to the world that we can be a sovereign nation that can also be a superpower someday. And I think us joining France and England and partially Russia at the time, fighting the first two world wars, I think that built America's confidence in our abilities to be a superpower. And what happened was, after World War II, America thought, we're the stuff. We're the ones that liberated you guys from the German Nazi party, and the invasions. And we're the ones that stopped Russia from pushing further. America thought it was hot stuff. And we became masters of, I would say, manipulating a new world order, the control of other nations. It started with Woodrow Wilson in World War I, and it built from there. Whoever decided that America wanted to be the superpower of the world, they've shared that with one generation after the next since 1917, and haven't stopped. It's been like 110 years now almost of just building on the identity of being a superpower. I think it was 1905 too. It might have been during the time of Theodore Roosevelt, who he had an agenda to really push for America to be a big player in world policies in the geopolitical spectrum. And, a lot of things happened. Germany thought they were okay and they can take over Europe and be the superpower for Europe at least. But they are also trying to push into Russia. So as you can see, it's just greed. It's all about greed. But it was for greed's sake. It wasn't for the people's sake. Although they probably picture, try to paint a picture with all their propaganda. America's no different. We're the worst. We're the worst of the capitalists. Although we have a great free market society, free society for, to be who we want to be, and the manifest destiny philosophy that we were given, and we have freedom of thought and speech, and to a point. We have the ability to think freely, speak freely, worship freely as we wish. But we also have people in any system that are greedy. Now, luckily, the system of government we do have requires a checks and balances. Nobody can be a dictator, and even World War II, keep going back to that. Franklin Delano Roosevelt made sure that he was the last president to be able to have 4 terms. And, of course, he died before he fulfilled the 4th term, but he made sure that any president after him could only be reelected one more time, could only be elected twice, two times in office, so that there is no dictatorship. Now, I wish that was the same for Supreme Court justices, for states, for senators, House of Representatives. I wish that we had term limits for all branches of government. But we don't have that. So there are some players in the Congress that they're career politicians, and they make policy that supports their agenda, and they can acquire wealth while they're there. So they're greedy. This I was about to say Tim Kaine. No, not Tim Kaine. The other guy in Minnesota. I already forgot his last name. Tim Walz. Okay? He was behind the opportunity to build wealth for himself. That's what the issue was, in my opinion. He got greedy. He saw an opportunity to exploit the left's agenda to bring in anybody that's undocumented and give them all the benefits of a citizen. He exploited those loopholes, and I'm almost sure, without having any evidence, that he laundered funds, just like the Bidens did through Ukraine. Just like a lot of people have done that. A lot of people have laundered money through wars, through conflicts, through areas around the world that are destabilized. And some people exploit the land. China is exploiting the Republic of Congo's land for their resources. Why? Because they want to be the leader in the sale of cell phones and all the minerals that's required for these things are in that region. At least they have a plethora of that. It's all greed. It's greed. Communism is greed. Capitalism is greed. Anything, any world or man-made system is greed. There is really no pure system that works for all. As hard as they want to talk about how great their thoughts are and their systems are, they're all liars. So I don't trust any of them. But when Jesus told the rich man, hey, Sell all that you have and follow me. That wasn't just a challenge for that wasn't just a challenge for that rich person. Although he was talking directly to him to challenge his heart. Where is his heart? Where your treasure is, where your heart is, that's where your treasure will be. Basically challenging his heart. What do you hold more valuable than anything else? That's what he was getting at. And then he's also talking indirectly to the audience around him. Those people that are his disciples, the people in the crowds, they all were listening to what Jesus was asking this rich man. Sell all that you have and follow me. And the people that have nothing, they were like, hey, I'm going to follow you anyways because I'm hungry. I think you can probably provide some food for me. I saw you got fishermen with you, so hey, if anything, these fishermen can feed us. I'm going to get a couple meals out of these guys. So, pretty smart people. So what about all the other people that are not, have no wealth, they have no income, they have no resources? How do they respond to Jesus saying, sell all that you have and follow me? Give to the poor. A lot of poor people were following Jesus when he was on the earth in the beginning. So a lot of people were tuning in to what he was trying to tell them. So, anywho, I'm not trying to get on the soapbox tonight, although I am on one. I seem to. I want this to be a debate. I want this to be pros and cons, and I'm going to have people on with me, not just me talking the debate, the issues. I want somebody to join me. The comments are a good place to comment, but I want to see some yelling, arguing against me about anything. Again, I'm not arrogant. I don't think I know everything. I'm not trying to pretend that I know everything. I'm a thinker. I'm a dialoguer. I share ideas. I listen to ideas. You know, I've made some decisions that I believe is solid, good decision making on what is truth and what is not, and what's good and what's bad. That's just, and most of my bias on what is good and bad is based on what's on the Bible or in there. So that would be where my bias leans toward. But I'm also just humble enough to know I'm a human being. I didn't create this world. I'm a creation of this world. So I didn't write the books. I didn't create the humans. You know, I didn't create the Big Bang. I didn't come from the, or make the primordial ooze. But I'm a thinker, and I've analyzed for most of my life. There are some parts of my life where I didn't analyze anything. I did the opposite. I try to shut my mind off. So, anyways, so enough about that. Enough about me. Let's talk about Maduro one more time. Just kind of end that conversation. And what do you believe? I mean, do you believe Trump legally was given legality for these things, justified in destroying targets that were trafficking in drugs into our country? You know, the people that argue against it, I would challenge them. Have you lost a loved one to any narcotic? Illegal ones. I would challenge you. If you haven't, then I would say, your opinion is minimal to me. I lost a lot of good friends, family to this stuff that comes in our country. Why is it coming into our country? Because us greedy America is full of money. We have expendable income. Many countries do not. So it's just a supply and demand. We have expendable income. We have too much time on our hands. We're a consumer-based society. We're going streaming companies left and right, and we're doing recreational substances to make us feel good. As a whole, that's what we do in this country. We have all this money, and then what do we do with it is what happens. All these people are doing, and I blame them because they're greedy, but I don't blame them for trying to make a buck. I disagree of how they're doing it, but they're meeting a demand in this country that should not have ever happened. We should not have had, America should have never had a demand for recreational drugs. But there's other people that play at all this stuff. This isn't something that we've come up with on our own. There's people in the intelligence agencies who look for ways to manipulate society. And every country. Okay, I'm not just talking about our intelligence agencies over the years. They look for ways to how to control society. If something doesn't bend their way, they want to try to change it. And the way they change it is infuse controlling factors. That's all. Destabilize a city through violence and racism and fake riots over stuff that really doesn't matter. Destroy a whole community with drugs. There's a lot of ways that you can manipulate a society. And they've done it. They're in the intelligence. And they're fighting people, again, that have expendable income. And they look for people that have addictive personalities. It's all psychological stuff, man. It's crazy. Yes, sir, Ronald. Love to have you. We love to chop it up. I just started doing this tonight, so we're gonna talk about more everything. It's really an open, just like your show. It's a very open discussion. So, would love to have you on. So, I'm not your average human being. I don't view myself as an average American, citizen. A lot of things in your life, we're collectively very different, every one of us, which is why I don't think the mayor of New York's thought process is going to work for New York. Even though they're all New Yorkers, and I've been to New York, there's a very diverse group of people in those boroughs. New Yorker alone is not going to be a good string to tie up all 5 boroughs. There's too many subcultures in that city that have different backgrounds and different cultural beliefs, different cultural values that you will never change. So, New York City will never be communist. I don't care what anybody thinks or says. There is a push for it, obviously. There is an agenda. If they can make New York City communist, they can manipulate a lot of the rest of the country. It's the media capital of the world. It's Broadway. It's the finance capital of the world. Excuse me. Excuse me. It's also where the New World Order set up, okay? It's the world organizations set up, camp there. So the agenda is control New York City. You control the world. It's never going to happen. Especially if there's a push to move the UN to another city, possibly Europe. So, anyways, geopolitics. Maduro, I think, is in the wrong. I think Trump's initiative to destroy the drugs coming into the U.S. is the right move. And to confiscate this very evil person. Again, 95% of Venezuelans are struggling. And you'll have 5% that are championing him. Those people are insane. That's all I'm going to say. And maybe they're the benefactors of his hoarding of wealth. That's probably why you get a couple people that are saying, oh, he's the greatest guy. He's so generous. Yeah. Well, ask the actual common folk living in the street how generous he has been over the last 15 years. And they'll tell you different. People in Florida are parading the victory, you know. The only problem I see is now there's a vacuum. There's kind of like, okay, now what? Who's going to rule it? Who's the one that decides? You know, it has to be the people. It can't be outside governments. We cannot make a Kuwait 2.0 out of this situation. Okay? My opinion, what we did after Saddam Hussein to Iraq was just crazy. They're still struggling. A lot of people are happy, but a lot of people are not. So it has to go to the people. It didn't happen in Afghanistan either. The people did not maintain control after we pulled out. That was all Taliban controlled. They're the elitists in that group of people. It's the same thing as communism. There's an elite group. They're the elite group. That's solely the political situation that Islam provides in that country. So, anyways, what other topics? What other things can we discuss? The daycare situation, okay, is Somalis. I was in the Navy when it was just beginning, that civil unrest in Somalia. And about 4 months after I got out of the Navy is when the Black Hawk Down situation occurred. And so I just missed it. But I remember it was part of the air wing, I believe, that was on our ship at one point. I was on an aircraft carrier. And so, you know, it's a tough situation that they were going into. They were trying to do the right thing. Restore hope is what the initial actions that we took. I think it was 1992. The fall of 1992, when our ship was in the Gulf War. And because of the Somalia uprising, they took our ship from the Gulf War right outside of the coast of Somalia. And it was Operation Restore Hope. And did we restore hope? I don't know. Maybe some people, there were some that restored, some hope was restored, but for the most part, most people were in rough shape. And Civil War ever since. So because of, you know, it's one thing I've noticed going back to beginning the establishment of the 13 colonies till now. Anytime we had an act of war against quote unquote outsiders, mostly the Europeans, and later on, we had an influx of people that were from those conflicts. And even more so when we began to go to outside lands. When we started going to other properties, we began to get policies made to favor those lands. Maybe as a retribution or some sort of payback or a good faith measure to restore the society. But the Vietnamese, they came here. Most of them are in this region. They're up in the Toronto area. But a lot of them went down to Louisiana, New Orleans area. Very big Vietnamese population. Are they a threat to our American society? Absolutely not. They're very good workers, contributors of society as a whole. They didn't have an agenda to change America to be communist. They just needed a way of life that was better than what they were trying to have during the conquest, the communist push from China to their country. But every conflict, it seems, beyond that, Korea, Vietnam, Grenada, Nicaragua, any other conflict, not just wars, Iraq, Afghanistan. We got more in my region, in the western New York area around Buffalo, New York. We have a lot of people that came from Yemen. And this is even before 9/11. This is right after the Gulf War, the first one, when we invaded Iraq the first time. A lot of Yemenis came to this country. And we had what they called the Lackawanna Six in Lackawanna, New York, right here, just the suburb of Buffalo. They're all from Yemen, most of them. 10 years after all that Gulf War, 9/11 happened. A lot of Saudis, a lot of Yemenis, a lot of people from all over the Middle East. And then we started having an influx of people that were having conflicts in their own countries. Bangladesh, we got 70,000 plus that we know of, Bangladeshi, that have been setting up camp in the city of Buffalo for the last 15 years or so, 20 years. But it's since COVID, I have never seen the influx of any kind of people group like we've had the last 5 years. It was like overnight, seems like. So, do I hate them? No. I got a friend that's in Bangladesh. He's a Christian. Him and his wife, we communicate frequently. He's in a very dire situation. It's a Muslim predominant state. Very unstable right now without their leadership stable. Same thing goes with the Yemenis. Their big brother, their big cousins, Saudi Arabia is very wealthy, but Yemen itself, they're kind of subject to Saudi Arabia. So the prince is the one that gets most of the wealth. There's a lot of other topics I can say, but, it's no different than 150 years ago when Germans came over here prior to, the World War II era. Irish, my people come from Ireland during the potato famine. French came over here with the English trying to set up colonies, in the 16 and the 1700s. That wasn't because of war, but that was because their countries were trying to win a war of European conquests, colonizing. Who could do colonizing and get all the resources from the Americas as possible, as much as possible. Spaniards, so Spain, Netherlands, France, England, Denmark were, I think, the biggest ones that were all over the world, finding everybody else's resources for their own country's sake. We had a bunch of people that were persecuted in those countries that were common folk, some of it religious, some of it socioeconomic. They were persecuted. They were looking for a better life. They heard America could provide that. The whole world is like that. Do I blame anybody from wanting to have a better life? Absolutely not. Everybody deserves a better life. But there's a power vacuum that happens when the good people leave, and then the bad people follow after them to take advantage of the opportunity to dominate that culture in another land. And they don't really have the freedoms that they were hoping for. Anyways, long story on that one. Any conflict that America has gotten in, though, that's the point. We've introduced the people groups that were our opposing people. So, capitalism. I believe in free market. I believe in free speech. I don't believe anybody should be martyred for their faith, but that's going to happen. And our definition of martyrdom is different for everybody. If you kill somebody for their faith, that's being martyred, okay? If you're getting called names, that's not being martyred. That's just being bullied, harassed. To me, that's like a wah, words. But yeah, it could be hurtful. Feelings can get hurt, but your head's not being chopped off. So you got to get over some things and toughen up, get stronger, become a better society and a people group, and can't be denied. What's the strategy of a people group that wants to dominate a culture or a country? The same thing that God told Noah and Adam and Eve. Be fruitful and multiply. That's how you dominate a culture. I'm going to say, even my European counterparts in this country, the descendants, we're not procreating like we used to. My mother was number 9 out of 10. So, and they were Catholics. They didn't believe in birth control. So there was tons of people that were Catholic having 5 to 10 kids per family. And that's just with one wife. Just imagine that. Now you have people in their culture, you can have 4 wives, and they're trying to have 5 to 10 kids per wife, dominating cultures. So what happened to our country? Abortion, that was a big one. About 65 million people from Generation X alone could have been here in this country, just this country, 65 million, let alone any of those that would duplicate, the 2.1 children, at least 2 children each, if they were coupled, 65 million coupled up, their children, millennials or Gen Zers, would be another 65 million. And those will be all citizens of this country. Taxpayers. Some people, yeah, might be on the system, but you'll have a lot more taxpayers too. Not people just taking advantage of the tax system. 120 million people that could have been part of a taxable system in this country. But we got fraud, and it's being spread all over the world. So there you go. So some people wanted that. That's what they wanted. They wanted America to not have anything. They want Americans to have wealth. They were jealous of Americans that had any kind of wealth. And wealth could be $50,000 in a bank. You know what I mean? To some people. Or owning a home that accumulates value over time. So, all right, what else we got? Any other debates? Any other topics? I think I'm losing everybody with my monologuing. I do think this is going to be a good forum eventually. I just wanted to launch something. Tuesday nights seem to be the best time for me right now to do something like this. And I figure 9 p.m. people are settled. Maybe they don't like CBS or Paramount Plus streaming. And so they'll want to tune into something like this. But I highly recommend that you get involved in conversations with each other. Use this group, Theology, Philosophy, Science, and Culture, as a means to share your ideas. And it's going to grow. We have just 100, a little bit over 100 people, 150, I think, that initially, not too bad for just starting the group about a month ago. So here's the results of the poll. Nobody said anything, but I just wanted to. The results are active. Okay, so the poll is still happening. Cuba, Colombia, Iran, Greenland. Who's Trump going for next? It looks like Cuba's destabilized because of Venezuela, because of the fact that Cuba really received a lot of its resources from Venezuela, particularly drug money. So Colombia is right next to them, so they're next. Iran is kind of playing the game again as far as the regimes. Again, when I talk about these countries, I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about the regimes that control it. Okay. Colombia, Cuba, Iran. Greenland's got no skin in the game, but I think Trump's trying to annex it because what has it done? What did Greenland contribute to the world? And I think that Trump wants to use that place as a means to incorporate that land strategically against people, countries like Russia, who's just hop, skip, and a jump over the water from them. The northern Atlantic seaways is a very strategic place. So that's all I got. I would say, me personally, Colombia is next on the hit list. Who knows if that's a year from now or 2 years or whatever, but I think it's on his list of things, his to-do list. I'd love to see Trump's to-do list. And we kind of heard some of the things in his campaign rallies and his speeches and all that, but I would like to see what his to-do list is before he leaves office. And if J.D. Vance or whoever will succeed him has a similar list, I don't know. So I think the fraud in Minnesota is a good thing that we've uncovered. It's a tip of the iceberg. I know it's happening here in New York State. I know it's in California. I know there's a lot of places with fraud, not just in daycare, but everything. Anything that the government funds, the federal government, whatever it's funding, the people fund it. You know, the government has no money. None of the governments have money. The U.S. citizens fund everything, especially the ones that are taxed and they don't have the returns at the end of the year. So, all right, guys. I had fun listening to myself doing absolutely nothing but talk about the goodness. But I do want to conclude with my thoughts about God and how good He is. He's a good Father. I think that He cares about us all. And I think, like some parents that are not so controlling of their children, let their children play and see what happens. To a limit, of course. A good parent's going to say, okay, there will be enough. Enough is enough. And I think God's a good father. But how many knows that, like the prodigal son, there's a time when the son says, just let me go. And God, what He does is turn us over to that reprobate mind. He turns us over to our own conscience. And we decide what to do from that point on. And that's up to us at that point, what we're going to do with our life. Make a good choice, make a bad choice. We can help people, we can hurt people. Why does God allow it? I won't know until I get up in heaven, which I believe I'll get to. So, with that, I'm done. Thanks for listening and talking. Let's talk, let's chat, let's debate. Let's have a little fun with this. And see how you guys feel about this forum. Again, we're going to have people on. It's not going to be just me. We're going to use different ways to include people in this mix. And hopefully we'll have some brothers in Christ and sisters in Christ joining the video, if not in the comments. I got some good friends that talk and have good thought, and I've made some good friendships over the years. We might not be the tightest of people, but we've known each other a long time, and we can understand each other, and we're mature enough to be able to discuss things. You know, some people are not mature enough to do that. So, anyways, God bless. Thank you for listening and watching. I hope you have a good night. And for those that watch this later, put on your calendars Tuesday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, unless we change the times and the dates at another time. So, that's it. I think I got to turn this off. Be patient with me. Okay, here we go. Dashing through the snow. You don't want me to sing. You definitely don't want me to sing. Okay. So I don't even know how to stop this. I don't even know how this stops. How do I get out of this, bro? Oh, there it is. I got it. End live video. Peace.